Hello! I've been watching a lot of Psycho lately. Films, TV shows, documentaries. It's been crazy. This is my top 10. It'd be too confusing to do this in reverse order, so let's start with number 1, Alfred Hitchcock's 1960 original. Rightly regarded as one of the great films of all time, a black joke based on a rather trashy novel by Robert Bloch. Huge departure for Hitchcock, who up until that point had been known for his glossy suspense films.
I have just made a motion picture, North by Northwest, to show you some of these delights. And the ideal place to start our holiday fun trip is New York.
Made with his own money, largely, quite cheaply, with a TV crew. And a huge departure too for audiences who've never seen anything like it. Never seen a toilet on film, never seen anything as fast cut and brutal and shocking as the murder in the shower. Never seen the leading lady killed off a third of the way into the film. And spoiler for anyone who's been living on the moon since 1960, the killer is the clean-cut, nervous motel owner, Norman Bates, who's been dressing up as his mother, the mother he murdered, and going around acting out his fantasies by knifing women to death.
Mother! Oh God, Mother!
I could spend weeks reading out the commentary that this film has inspired. There's reams and reams of it. But I'm going to go with two passages. One from this book that had a big influence on me in the 80s, Danny Peary's Guide for the Film Fanatic. Far and away the most frightening film ever made, he writes, but oddly people who see it for the first time now in the 80s usually aren't scared at all. Oh, but to have seen it in 1960.
Blood! Blood!
The other thing that sticks in my mind is William Goldman's book Adventures in the Screen Trade, again from the 80s, and Goldman was a famous screenwriter, and he talks about how before Psycho, Hitchcock was regarded as this, very professional filmmaker who made things like North by Northwest and Rear Window. And then after Psycho, people started calling him a genius. And if people are calling you a genius all the time, it's going to go to your head and affect your work. And all the films after Psycho that Hitchcock made, and I include his next film, The Birds, were pretty bad. I mean, they just got worse and worse. Number 2 is the TV series Bates Motel, which ran from 2013 to 2017. I watched it recently on Amazon Prime UK, and it's why I've gone down this particular Psycho rabbit hole.
This is our chance to start over.
Based on the original film and the Robert Bloch novel, it's a contemporary reimagining of the Norman Bates story, but it's also about his mother Norma and the codependent relationship that they have, the damaged people that they are, and how he slowly becomes this lunatic, this psycho.
You said you wanted me to have a life here.
Don't lose your temper at me, Norman!
I had my doubts before I watched it, but I was riveted by the full 50 episodes, and I kind of assumed that they would end it with Marion Crane, the Janet Leigh character from the first film, arriving at the Bates Motel, about to be murdered in the shower, but they don't, because it's a reimagining. They play around with the events in ways that you don't expect, and it's very, very ingenious.
I love you, Norman.
I love you too, Mom.
Number 3 is Psycho 2, directed by Australian Hitchcock scholar Richard Franklin and released in 1983. Once again starring Anthony Perkins as Norman Bates.
22 years later, Norman Bates is home.
At the time everyone expected this film to be a trashy cash-in, but it's much more intelligent and respectful than that. And the thing that I like about it is that they turn Norman not into the hero exactly, but a figure of sympathy, because he's been released from the mental hospital after 22 years. He's cured. He just wants to live a normal, quiet life. And he's surrounded by these nominally sane people who are spiteful and vindictive and want to bring him down. And the story all follows on from that.
Norman, it couldn't be your mother.
This is one of Quentin Tarantino's favourite films, and he prefers it to the original. I watched recently also a Riff Tracks version. That's where you have comedians talking over the top of the film. And I watched that with a friend who hadn't seen this before and came away thinking that it was a bad film because they'd pointed out all the logical errors and the plot holes and things. I think that's very unfortunate. In my view, this is a wonderful film and highly rewarding if you're prepared not to sneer at it. Jostling for positions 4 and 5 on my list are a couple of documentaries. We're going to start with 78-52. 78 shots and 52 cuts that changed cinema forever. It's all about the shower scene, basically.
And the audience cannot wait to see more.
The director, Alexander Philippe, has assembled a lot of film insiders, some of them very distinguished, to essentially geek out about that shower scene and the film Psycho in general. One of the people in it is Marley Renfro, who was a nude model in those days and was Janet Leigh's body double in the shower. But you also hear from people like the legendary sound editor Walter Murch, who talks about how Psycho changed the whole culture of people going to the cinema, because in those days you would just turn up whenever you felt like it in the middle of a film, you watch the rest of it, you watch the next film because it was a double feature, and then eventually you would leave when you came to the point of here's where we came in. And with Psycho, Hitchcock insisted that people had to arrive before the film started. They couldn't just turn up in the middle, they had to sit through it from beginning to end. And, as I say, completely changed how people go to the movies. One comment that I liked on the DVD extras was from the director of this film, Philippe, who says that the Psycho shower scene is like the Mona Lisa. Every time you go back to it, you see something new. This brings me to number 5 on my list, Psycho Legacy, which is less of a film studies piece and more of a fan film. It's people who were actors, writers, directors or whatever of the 4 Anthony Perkins films telling behind the scenes anecdotes, and if you're a Psycho fan, it's an absolute treat, I think. This is a German Blu-ray. You can watch it in English. If you haven't seen all 4 of the Psycho films, it's not going to make complete sense to you, but I mean, I've barely started on the Blu-ray extras on this thing, and there are so many. I mean, there's Anthony Perkins appearing at a convention and doing a question and answer session. I think that's about 40 minutes in itself, and there's just so much to watch on this. I love it. Number 6 on the list, and slightly out of left field, is the biopic from 2012, Hitchcock.
How does it end?
I promised Mother I wouldn't tell.
This one is based on a book by the journalist Stephen Rebello, Alfred Hitchcock and the Making of Psycho, and it stars Anthony Hopkins in a fat suit and Helen Mirren as his wife, Hitchcock's wife, Alma Reville. The film does have quite a lot of strengths. It does really drive home what a gamble this all was for Hitchcock, and Scarlett Johansson is also very well cast as Janet Leigh. The problem I find with it, as I do with a lot of biopics, is that they have shoehorned the information into the dialogue in a way that can sound very stilted at times. So there's quite a bit of, oh yes, Ed Gein, the serial killer in Wisconsin. Did they say serial killer in those days? You know what I mean. Number 7 is Psycho 4. Number 8 is Psycho 3. Let's take the 2 of these together. Anthony Perkins himself directed Psycho 3, which came out in 1986 and carried the tagline, Norman Bates is back to normal but mother's off her rocker again. Mother! It was everything that Psycho 2 wasn't, in the sense that it was rather a low-grade slasher type of film in some respects, and it was a critical and commercial flop. He also wanted to direct Psycho for the Beginning, a Showtime TV movie from 1990, but wasn't allowed to. This one was scripted by Joseph Stefano, who'd written the original film 30 years earlier, and as well as Perkins, it starred in flashback Henry Thomas of E.T. the Extraterrestrial fame as a young Norman Bates, and Olivia Hussey as his mother Norma, and it's all about their tumultuous relationship and how he started murdering women.
Kill her.
I can't, no!
Then I'll do it for you.
The framing device is that old Norman Bates is calling a radio phone in and telling them all about it. I think they were flogging a dead horse by this point. Having said that, all of the Psycho sequels are a darn sight better than number 9 on my list, Gus Van Sant's 1998 remake of Psycho, which, as you can see, I spent a lot of money on eBay buying it without a box. It's supposedly a shot-for-shot remake in colour. It isn't. There are little differences all the way through, apart from the fact that when Norman is looking through the peephole in the wall at Marion undressing, you can hear him playing with himself. The weakness that really leaps out at you is the casting of Vince Vaughn as Norman. You know, with Anthony Perkins, here was a guy who was essentially a matinee idol type, and that it could have been the boy next door. You didn't think of him as a serial killer, whereas Vaughn plays him as a creepy man who just looks like a serial killer. You know, if you saw him, you'd run a mile. I think the excuse for making this was that the younger generation didn't like watching black and white films, but you look at it and you just think, what were they thinking? What was the point of that? But there is a film that is much, much worse than that. It takes the Booby Prize on my list. Its name is Bates Motel, and it was shown on TV in 1987 as a pilot for a series.
Bates Motel is a chilling supernatural thriller.
The lead actor is Bud Cort, previously of Harold and Maude, who befriends Norman Bates in a mental institution, and when Norman dies, he leaves everything to this guy who takes over the Bates Motel. And later on in the film, all these sort of ghostly things start happening in a Twilight Zone kind of way. Norman's mother gets a mention in this, but she's not called Norma. I think she's called Gloria or possibly Gladys. I'm not going to watch the thing again, it's terrible. So that's my top 10. Thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and who knows, I might make another video when I've read all the Psycho books.